Hey LinkedIn, hey YouTube, it's Liam Redding, Senior HubSpot Strategist for Remotish Agency. Today I'm going to be demoing a new process for you that I'm about to roll out for a client. If you use documents in your sales process and you use HubSpot, it's also very likely that you use a DocuSign or PandaDoc integration to facilitate the signing of documents such as NDAs, proposals, and contracts. Um, I bet you've also wondered whether or not you could build automation off of those DocuSign or PandaDoc integrations to facilitate the movement of deals through your pipeline automatically so that your sales team doesn't have to have the manual task of following up to move that deal, dragging it and dropping it into a new stage. What actually could build automation to run that for you. And today we're going to be demoing that exact automation. We're not necessarily going to be showing how it works 100% behind the scenes, but I will be showing some key insights into how the model works, which if you are technically savvy, you could then probably take and implement, figure out how it works on your own. So in this process, we now have a pipeline called Remotish Test, and that is in the we've essentially created different stages of this pipeline. So it begins with the lead being captured. Any lead who is captured in this stage is typically going to be from a form fill. So that's how that would end up here. It could also be created manually by a sales rep. At that point, it needs to become salesperson's qualified. So it would be moved into this stage. And then the next stages are just all documents, right? We need them to sign the NDA. We need to send the proposal. We need to get the proposal signed as a contract. And then at that point, we need to collect payment, and it would be moved to closed one. So we have the test record here. It would be in the lead captured stage. So the next thing that's going to happen is that we would drag and drop this from lead captured to salesperson qualified. So at this point, we actually want the automation to run. And we don't want it to trigger anything up until the point when it's qualified, because all the lead captured deals essentially shouldn't be triggering the automation until a person goes in and qualifies them. So the next thing that you're going to see, and one of the things that is used heavily throughout this model, is associate, and we'll see some association labels begin to come into play. So the reason why we needed to use association labels was just the way that the logic is set up for the DocuSign and PandaDoc integration is actually very limited. And that's why it's hard to build this automation, and there's a lot of different tools that you have to use and leverage in order to get it to work. The current restriction with the integration is that it lives only really on the contact record from like a properties perspective. So if you're looking to create automation or create list logic, you can't build it anywhere else except from the contact object. So you can't trigger any automation from the deal record. Really nothing is housed on the deal record. It's just associated on this sidebar over here. So we'll give the automation a couple minutes to run between each step. So we should see it starting to enroll in workflows. So we can see that beginning to happen here. That's going to be triggering the process of these association labels being updated. And again, we're using the Associate app in that process. But we're going to just wait. So it's been salesperson qualified. In any minute, those will be updated. I might actually pause the video and wait for that process to finalize before recording the next session. But at this point, it has become salesperson qualified. So what's the next step? We need to get the NDA sent. So we will wait and see the different association labels that we have, just so you can see them. We're going to be needs NDA signed, needs proposal sent, needs proposal signed, and then completed documentation. So actually, I think the next step in this process is that we have to send the NDA. So the first association label, if we look up here, again, one more time, the association label for the NDA stage, which is the next stage in the process, is needs NDA signed. So in order to get to the association label of needs NDA signed, you have to send the NDA to the contact for them to sign it. So we will scroll down to the DocuSign. We'll select from a template. And I've attached this to a test account that I created with a test proposal and a test NDA. So at this point, we would actually type in that contact's name. I'm not exactly sure why it's not showing me. So you would select the contact. You would have to put in a text message, and you would send that to the recipient. Okay, so at that point, it's now created a task for me to get the NDA signed, though, even though the association label wasn't updated, and we can refresh it one more time. So the association label has been updated at this point to needs NDA signed. We've now also sent that NDA. There's no new stage for it to move to right now for NDA sent, but you could build that into your process and also have it move to NDA sent after that NDA is actually sent. So at this point, in order for it to move to the NDA signed stage, which would be the next stage in the process, we would need that NDA to actually be signed by the contact. So the contact would have to go into their email, they would sign the NDA, and then at the point that the NDA is signed, the deal would automatically move from salesperson qualified to NDA signed, and then create a task that the proposal needs to be sent. So I'm going to open up my email real quick and go find that document, and then we will actually submit it together, and then we will wait and see the deals movement. Okay, so I am now in my email provider. See that I have the DocuSign email from DocuSign asking me to review and sign the documents. I'm not even sure it'll actually let you on this page. So I'm signing the document right now. And the document has been successfully signed. So if we come back into the deal pipeline, what we should see now is that the NDA this deal moves itself to the NDA signed stage, and the automation updates the association label from needs NDA signed to needs proposal sent. Because at this point, that would be the next stage in the process, is that the NDA has already been signed, so what is next? We need to send the proposal. And it should also create a task. At this point, we wouldn't even know at this point that the NDA was signed, because nothing has been updated in the pipeline, but that should be happening very shortly. It does take about anywhere from 3 to 5 minutes for all the automation on the back end to execute. One of the reasons, just to continue talking about the model while we wait for these updates to occur, the reason why these association labels are such an important part is because of the limitation in logic, that the logic isn't actually stored on the deal record, it's stored on the contact object. Because of that, you need to have a way to pinpoint which deals you're working on, or like which deals in the portal need to be going through this process. Because if you were to just turn this on and affect all the deals, that may not be the process that you want. Because you're starting from the contact object, you have to use it. There's a one-to-many relationship that can exist between contacts and deals. So one of the things that HubSpot does when you're trying to do cross-object logic like that is it has to say, if I'm trying to build deal logic off the contact, is that contact is associated to at least one deal that meets this criteria. And because that's the process, you have to build these association labels that pinpoint which deals you need to move through the different stages. And then actually a different version of this process would need to be built for every single pipeline in your portal, or at least in our use case. Okay, so we now have the new association label of needs proposal sent, which also means that if we come back into the deal pipeline here and refresh, it should have moved to a new stage. Yep, so it's an NDA signed now. We need the proposal sent, and then if you go into the document, you can actually scroll down to the bottom and see that it has been completed. So these different statuses are very important as well. All the automation also had to be built in a way that it could handle re-enrollment if somebody were to come back down through the process again in the future. So we used list logic to build a lot of the workflow enrollment criteria, and then we used them as re-enrollment triggers, and a lot of that was built off of these different statuses. So I just crossed off the wrong one, but we would have crossed off at that point that we completed the NDA, and then we need to send the proposal. So again, that's what stage we're in. So the next step in this process would be to send them the proposal. So we would choose a template, test proposal, next. We are going to email it to promotish.agency. Come on. It's having a really hard time thinking. Computer is processing both recording and trying to look up this email. Come on. I know I'm in there. Yep, page unresponsive. Okay, I don't know what that was. My computer's struggling a little bit right now, but we're going to continue. So we're going to send this test message with the test proposal. We're going to send that to the recipients. So that should deliver to my email. And then at this point, again, we are in the NDA sign. So the automation, the next step in the automation would be to get the proposal would be sent. So it would move to the proposal sent stage, and then we would need to get the contract signed. So again, it needs proposal sent, and then that should get updated to needs proposal signed. And then once it gets signed, it would move itself to contract signed. And then the association label at that point should be updated to completed documentation. All right, we are going to actually pause the video at this point. We'll go down here and look. So again, I'll show you why this is important on the different statuses down here. So these are going to be triggered. They're called envelopes is what they're called in logic. So each of these are stored as like an envelope. And you also have to use the one-to-many associations for this logic as well. So like there could be multiple envelopes associated to a single contact. There can also be multiple deals associated to a single contact. And that's what makes this automation really hard. But we have completed here and sent here. So for example, you would use logic that the document name contains any of proposal, and the status is any of sent, and the occurred date was less than 1 day ago. Any contact in association to at least one DocuSign envelope that contains all three pieces of those logic. You could then use that to pinpoint the deal records in association with them. So the other side of that logic, just to continue off of that, if the one side of the logic is on the DocuSign piece, which would be, the envelope contains any of document name contains any of proposal, status is sent, occurred less than 1 day ago, and we would then go look at the deal, right? Deal is any of Remotish test pipeline, and in the NDA signed stage of the pipeline, then we want to trigger the next step in the automation. So this should update itself to proposal sent. Just continue to refresh. It does, like I said, take anywhere from 3 to 5 minutes. I don't want to keep you guys waiting too long, so we will continue with the process, or pause the video until the process finishes. If it's not updated soon. So this is in the need proposal sent stage, but it needs to be updated to, I'm not going to change it, I'm just looking at it. So we would need to update it from needs proposal sent to needs proposal signed. So again, clicking next, not making any updates. Still need proposal sent. That's still in the NDA signed. We will refresh. My computer does not like all this refreshing. Okay, let's look at what workflows it's going through down here. One of the things I was actually running into was, and again, this is an end-to-end test that I'm doing literally live. The actual, I think the contact has to open the document. And again, this is why statuses are so important. You're seeing this live. Like the sent status, I don't think that actually is what triggers there's, for some reason that doesn't work. The sent status won't trigger the automation to run. So when the contact actually clicks this button and clicks review document, they open that up. What then happens is the status on this record will change from sent to like delivered or something like that. And then that delivered status will trigger that. So that would be the next step. I'm going to click this review document. So at this point, I've opened the document. I don't even need my email open anymore. I've opened the document. So that I haven't actually signed it though. So this should trigger this to update this. Let's see. So everything's still the same. It's going to still be in the same stage, which is NDA signed, needs proposal sent. So the proposal has been sent. And this status down here needs to update itself. From sent to like delivered. So the last action it took was at 32, which was 10 minutes ago. So the next step would be, once this becomes still sent, maybe if we hit continue, maybe I have to actually open it. All right, I still haven't signed it. I'm just trying to see what triggers this. I think it's cool to show people the process, like how you go through, steps of checking to see, make sure something happens so that you understand exactly how it functions. The DocuSign, even though the automation may take a minute to run, like the DocuSign integration should populate. Yeah, so it's updated to delivered, right? It was sent before, so now it's delivered. So now the last automation that we were triggered to go down was at 32. So it's been almost 10 minutes, and we should see a new automation run soon. Go ahead and refresh, actually. All right, so the association label is still the same. And that means that likely the deal stage is still the same as well. It was an NDA signed, so it needs to go to proposal sent. That has become delivered, and that makes me hopeful that this is going to run. Again, 3 to 5 minutes between every change that you make. And it would be okay, like most of the time, like there's going to be a pause between the instances of when these are occurring. Like they're not all going to happen back to back. There's going to be natural space that occurs between them. So you don't really have to be that worried. And one of the things that I was testing is one of the things that is out of our control is that we can't control the time between when they would open this up and then when they would sign it, right? Because they would likely do that back to back. Although that might not be the case, they might open it, read through it. They might, send it to somebody else to read through it. At that point, it would be delivered, and then they would move through different stages of the pipeline. But even if they go through that process really fast, right? They open the document, they sign the document. It would still carry the process through, even though there wasn't a lot of time for those changes to process. That is still one of the things that I'm working through and testing. But in some of the early tests, it was promising that that wasn't going to affect this model. So I'm really just refreshing this one to show the visual. There we go. It updated itself to proposal sent. So again, it's triggered based off of that delivered. If somebody could figure out why it won't execute off of sent, I would love to know. So if there's somebody out there who's a DocuSign expert or built some part of this integration, I would appreciate understanding why that doesn't work. So the next thing that would happen with that proposal would need to be signed, which at that point would be turned into a contract. If there is a true difference between your proposals and your contracts, then you could also build, a contract piece of this into the process. You should also see the association label update. We want to make sure. So it should change to needs proposal signed. Yeah, so that it's needs proposal signed now. There is no task created at this point because, again, the sales rep or whoever is working this isn't going to be the one to sign that proposal. It's actually going to be the client or the customer. So I'm going to actually go into this test proposal, add my signature, finish. I don't think you can see this. So that's been completed. I've now signed that proposal. So the next stage in this process would be that the automation would be triggered to move the deal from proposal sent to contract signed. And then at that point, the final association label is that documentation has been completed. So it's just documentation completed. And then the automation just creates a task and assigns it to the deal owner, letting them know that this particular contact has finished the process. And at that point, you would need to collect payment. So I will close the DocuSign. And also close this. It's cool to see the visual, but we've seen a couple times it move through those stages, so we don't need to see that anymore. We can see that up here. And then the proposal has now been completed. So again, start to see that automation fire. We'll give it 3 to 5 minutes, and the association label will be up to date, and the deal stage will change. That will be the end of the demo. Go ahead and close that contact record as well. My computer seems to be struggling a bit through this video. I don't want to refresh it too many times, so I'm going to give it 15 more seconds or so. And then if it goes beyond this refresh, I will likely pause. I just wanted to make sure on the first couple changes that you were able to see that the video was live, that we weren't actually like going in and changing any association labels or dragging and dropping deals to new stages. What you saw was actually happening by automation. So we're going to go ahead and refresh one more time. It's still not done. Okay, so we at this point are going to pause the video, and I will show you the final result when it loads. All right, this is for any of you who stuck around for the end of this video. So it was taking a while for this to fire, and I wanted to make sure that everything was still functioning properly. So I'm going to show you one of the parts of going and auditing that process. So I actually opened up the DocuSign list here. So these are the active lists that are triggering to enroll contacts into Part 1 workflows, which then trigger a deal property to be sent into the deal from the contact to then update the automation association labels. So that's how the process works, right? Because everything's stored on the contact. So we have to have a contact-based workflow that's triggered by this list enrollment criteria. All of this needs to be true. This also has re-enrollment so that if somebody comes back through the process, it'll work for them a second time. So again, we are looking at the test contact record that I created. And we're seeing that it matches all of our criteria, which means it should be triggering and going down that process any second. So I'm just going to refresh this one more time. So it still hasn't been completed, right? It still needs proposal signed. So we're waiting for that to come through the automation still. But the list, the first part of that has triggered because we meet the list criteria. So we see down here, the group 1 is that Liam Redding has at least one DocuSign event template that has all of proposal or contract. In this case, it would be proposal. That status is completed. It occurred less than 1 day ago. And then they also have an association with a deal that has an association label and needs proposal signed in the proposal sent remote test stage. In this instance, we want to trigger that very specific contact to go down the workflow. And then in Part 1, we can use that association label to say any contact or any deal in association with the contact that has an association label needs proposal signed, send or update this deal property. That deal property triggers this Part 2 workflow on the deal level that actually moves the deal. So we're going to continue to wait here, and I'm going to actually pause the video now and go analyze what happened with the workflows. So to everybody who stuck around at the end of this video, we're about to go look at the workflows as well. All right, so I looked at it for about 2 minutes. I know what's going on. I'll walk through it with you. So the list was the list that we just looked at. If you have the list membership as any of DocuSign tests for contract signed, then we are going to, again, this is contact based. We're going to then set a deal property for contract signed of the associated deals labeled needs proposal signed to yes. And then that's going to trigger Part 2. If contract signed is any of yes and deal stage is any of proposal sent, we're going to update the stage. We're going to update the association label, and then we are going to create a task. So this one likely has a re-enrollment on it. It does not. So the deal wouldn't need re-enrollment on it because it would be a net new deal every time, but the contact can come back down the process multiple times. And that actually shows, because I've gone through the process before with this test record. So I'm going through this multiple times. The reason why this didn't trigger, even though I'm a member of that list, as we've already seen, is because there's no re-enrollment turned on here. So we need to turn on our re-enrollment here. Once I do that, I'm going to become a member. And then it's going to say, do we want to enroll? I guess it doesn't. So that part of the process didn't actually work as planned for the next stage of that to execute. but now we have fixed that issue. And then if you go, or how I found out what was happening was I went to the enrollment history. I saw that, I should have been enrolled. The last person that was enrolled was the last time I tested on March 29th. So in order to go back through the process, you would have to have that re-enrollment trigger turned on because my record has already gone down through this workflow. So that was the issue. And I don't believe that I'm going to go back through that process, but one way that you can force it is to create a second version of this. And then I'm going to turn this on. So what this is going to do is going to force that to occur. I apologize for my washer. I noticed like a couple minutes ago, it's just like roaring in the background. But I appreciate everybody if you're still watching. I know this is 30 minutes, but I hope you guys found the information valuable. We are going to wait until it actually tells us how many existing contacts meet this criteria. 1, right? That's the record that was sitting in that list. We are going to turn it on for that contact. Contact is going to go down part 1 now. I'm just going to wait. Once there's a 1 populated here, I can then turn the workflow off and delete it. So I'm going to just make sure that the deal record is triggered to come down. So met enrollment criteria, and that just happened. So this is the cloned workflow. We can now turn this off and delete it. And then that should cause, contract has been signed, which means that if we refresh this, it will be updated from proposal sent to contract signed stage. And then the association label has become completed documentation. So there you have it. The automation does work from end to end. Got a little bit of insight into how it actually functions. It's one of the really cool automations that I built. I'm sure could be replicated in many other instances. So yeah, I'm interested to see if anybody else executes this strategy and what your findings are from it. So thank you for watching to the end, and I will be back more with other HubSpot thought leadership content in the near future.